Tonight, the end of DACA.
Oh my fucking God.
Conservative, but caught in the middle. And America's secret housing crisis. Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga today said he won't take part in the proposed October 17th presidential election redo without, quote, legal and constitutional guarantees. Kenya's Supreme Court nullified the August 8th election results, citing irregularities in the vote.
We must deal with all the irregularities which were committed, beginning with the people who committed them.
President Uhuru Kenyatta has not been accused of any wrongdoing. Russian President Vladimir Putin warned the U.S. against supplying arms to Ukraine after Secretary of Defense James Mattis said he was reviewing sending defensive weapons.
Поставка оружия в зону конфликта не идет на пользу умиротворению, а только усугубляет ситуацию. Но количество жертв, безусловно, может увеличиться.
Putin also said pro-Russian fighters could react to a U.S. move by providing weapons to other parts of the country. Pro-Russian separatists and Ukrainian government forces have been fighting since 2014. Russia denies that it sent troops and weapons to the region. In a landmark privacy case, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that companies must tell employees beforehand if their work email accounts are being monitored. The court found that a Romanian man's privacy had been violated when he was fired in 2007 for exchanging messages with his brother's fiancée on a company account during work. His employer used printouts of the communication as evidence of his breach of company protocol. The ruling applies to the 47 members of the Council of Europe. Lego is cutting 1,400 jobs, about 8% of its workforce, after its first drop in sales in 13 years. In 2004, the Danish company almost went bankrupt, but turned things around with movie and video game franchises and new toy lines. Today, the executive chairman said the business had become too complex and needed to reset. Pharmaceutical company Sanofi Pasteur announced on Friday it will no longer pursue a Zika vaccine, blaming a decrease in federal funding for research related to the virus. Earlier this year, lawmakers expressed concern about how much the company would charge for a drug developed with taxpayer money. The virus has been linked to thousands of babies born with underdeveloped brains.
I'm here today to announce that the program known as DACA that was effectuated under the Obama administration is being rescinded.
And with that, close to 800,000 immigrants protected under the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program lost their rights to live and work in the United States. Homeland Security will stop accepting applications to the program immediately. But the Trump administration extended protection of DACA recipients for another 6 months, giving Congress a window to create a permanent plan that might stave off mass deportations. This morning, David Noriega was with one DACA recipient as the secure future in the country where he grew up evaporated.
The days leading up to Jeff Sessions' DACA announcement were doubly anxious for Luis Cortez Romero. Not only is he an immigration attorney with DACA clients, he's also a DACA recipient himself. Before Cortez turned 2 years old, his parents left Michoacan, Mexico, and migrated without papers to California, where they still live today. He grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, playing in punk bands and exploring his Mexican roots, but feeling always like an American kid. So do you remember Mexico at all?
I do not. And so I imagine Mexico how anybody else would imagine it who's never been there. And so it's interesting because some of my peers who were born here and raised here will tell me more about Mexico than I know about it and have experienced more of Mexico than I have.
Cortez was in law school in Idaho when Obama announced DACA in 2012. Before DACA, he wasn't sure what he would do with his law degree, but figured it would improve his opportunities. It was DACA that allowed him to start working at a law firm as soon as he graduated, and 5 years later, he landed his first high-profile case. Daniel Ramirez Medina, the first DACA recipient detained under the Trump administration.
Pues estoy bien y estoy bien agradecido con todos con toda la gente que me apoyó y a todos los Dreamers también. Muchas gracias.
Characterize for me what it's going to mean if this goes away.
I think it's going to be devastating. It's going to feel like such a loss in so many different ways. And that loss is going to be coupled with a tremendous amount of fear.
We are the immigrants! We are the immigrants! The mighty, mighty immigrants!
DACA has a lot of moving parts, but it essentially does two things. It promises young undocumented immigrants with a high school diploma and no significant criminal record that they will not be deported for 2 years. And in that same period, it gives them work permits. Even though they pay into Social Security, DACA recipients are not eligible for Medicaid, financial aid for college, or any other federal benefits.
Ending DACA, and we're told it's going to be a phase out. So we're waiting a couple hours. We're going to hear from the Attorney General. We are not expecting to hear from the President specifically on DACA, though we will send her up 4 o'clock.
On Tuesday morning, shortly before Sessions made his announcement, Cortez met with Cynthia Gutierrez, a DACA recipient who lives just outside Seattle.
With where you're working at now, is that something that they have brought up? Like, have they brought up your work permit before? Like,
and I did tell them, like, hey, this is going on. If this does end up happening, you know, I might not be able to work anymore. The owner kind of just told me, like, don't worry about it. We'll worry about it when it gets here. Right. I really don't want to lose you as an employee. You're valued here. So I was just like, well, I kind of wanted to mention it because it worries me. It scares me. Yeah.
When the time came for Sessions to deliver his statement, Cortez watched from a reception area in his office.
The effect of this unilateral executive amnesty, among other things, contributed to a surge of minors at the southern border that yielded terrible humanitarian consequences. It also denied jobs to hundreds of thousands of Americans.
What this announcement creates is it's a time bomb. It's a time bomb for Congress to act. Otherwise, people are going to start falling from this program, whether in 6 months or, you know, whatever that looks like. It leaves Dreamers, their lives in the hands of political parties that they have no participation in. And that's a very, very scary thing. Fuck.
Congressman Will Hurd is probably feeling the same way. After a long August recess, Hurd and the rest of Congress returned to Washington today. Members already had a jam-packed calendar to deal with. They have to fund the government, pay the nation's debts, and come up with aid for Hurricane Harvey victims. And now some of them also have to figure out a way to reassure Dreamers that they won't be deported.
The people united!
Hurd represents an area that is majority Latino, in Texas, but he's also a Republican, in Texas. He tried to strike a balance in his response to the end of DACA. Quote, "There is no doubt that our immigration system is broken. Congress must provide a permanent legislative solution for children brought here through no fault of their own," end quote. Between the administration's announcement today, Charlottesville, Trump's combative Phoenix speech, and the pardon of Joe Arpaio, the president is making it hard for a guy like Hurd, who wants to find a way to work with both sides. I spent a week with him recently as he tried to do just that. This is a story about how one moderate Republican spent his summer break dealing with President Trump. There are a lot of Dairy Queens in Texas, so Hurd hosts town halls in them every August.
I represent the big towns and the small towns. I represent the people that voted for me and didn't vote for me.
This is where he eats all those blizzards. The Texas 23rd Congressional District, 820 miles stretching along the U.S. border with Mexico. It has a large Latino population, and it swings wildly. In the last election, Hurd won narrowly, and so did Hillary Clinton. Hurd has been called the future of the GOP, but he looks and sounds nothing like the party base at the moment.
You voted against the Affordable Care Act?
I did not, actually. I didn't. I was only one of 5 Republicans that didn't.
Hurd says the success of Trumpian rhetoric is a blip. Old white guys are not going to save the grand old party. Demographic changes in Texas support Hurd's take on this.
If the Republican Party in Texas doesn't look like Texas, there's going to be problems in the future, right? And so I think I'm the vanguard when it comes to the Republican Party in parts of the community that we haven't appealed to.
So who is this guy? And what's his secret?
I spent 9.5 years as undercover officer in the CIA.
In that role, he had to brief members of Congress. He was not impressed.
I was in Kabul, Afghanistan, managing all of our undercover operations, and we had a CODEL, a congressional delegation, in and to hear about what's going on. And I walk in, I hear a member of Congress say, "Is the CIA going to cut this briefing short so we can get to the bazaar to buy rugs?" And then we walk in the briefing, and one of the members, been on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence for 5 years, raises his hand. He says, "Hurd, what's the difference between a Sunni and a Shia?" And I'm thinking he's getting ready to make a really inappropriate joke. And my response was, "I don't know, Congressman, what's the difference?" And I'm getting ready to go, right? Face goes bright red, didn't know that difference in Islam.
So is the Bazaar guy and the didn't know Sunni Shia guy, are they still in Congress?
No.
Hurd talks about finding simple solutions that aim to please both sides on most issues, most of the time. This is what it sounds like at a Hurd town hall. Trump's wall?
Building a wall from sea to shining sea is the most expensive and least effective way to do border security.
Government shutdown?
Nobody's interested in shutting the government down. Shutting the government down actually costs more money.
Taxes?
Simplify the tax code, close loopholes, and bring the rates down.
Spending?
We got to double down on National Institute of Health. We got to make sure that we're doing the kind of basic research we need in order to solve these big problems.
Hurd was a computer science major, so he loves those nerdy tech fixes.
I'd rather lay a big 2 fiber optic cables along the border that can be used as a sensor. And by the way, we can tap into it to use high-speed internet access along many of these communities.
Does the district reflect you, or do you reflect the district?
I hope I reflect the district.
But I mean, do you find yourself a lot of times in your 50-50 district being like, man, I really would like to say this, but I can't because I have all these Democrats that I represent?
Look, I don't. Like I said, what you see is what you get. So let's say 71% Latino district. Nobody said the black dude could get elected in a Hispanic district.
What Hurd wants to be talking about is new software for the VA and teaching kids to code.
I'm here in Del Rio with one of my STEM advisors. Say hi to America.
Hi, America.
It's what he actually likes. It's also what actually works. Hurd doesn't talk much about President Trump, and people in his district don't ask a lot about him. He basically steers clear of the whole thing. And that's because finding middle ground on Trump is nearly impossible. But Hurd has tried it. How do you have a moderate position on Donald Trump?
My position on this president is the same position I had on the last president. I'm going to agree when I agree, and I'm going to disagree when I disagree.
Most of his recent 27-stop town hall tour happened right before Charlottesville. This interview took place hours before the death of Heather Heyer. At that moment, Hurd was still with Trump. Has the president earned your 2020 vote?
Man, 2020 is like a lifetime away.
So maybe not.
No, look, I think when it comes to national security, he's doing a great job.
So is that a yes then?
That is a yes.
12 days later, after roundly criticizing Trump on his response to Charlottesville, Hurd wasn't ready to say yes to Trump in 2020 anymore.
Do you support his renomination in 2020? He's clearly running. He's been on the campaign trail this week.
Yeah. Look, 2020 is a really long ways away.
Shouldn't that be a question that gets a simple yes from a Republican member of Congress?
Maybe it should, maybe it shouldn't.
Hurd was driving around Texas selling his brand of what it means to be a Republican.
Well, we're very proud of you. We're very proud of what you've done. Well, thank you.
But over and over again, Trump turned the focus back to a GOP that Hurd has to keep saying he's not a part of. Trump is the base's vision of the future. Hurd is the establishment's. The next couple of months in Washington will help determine which future Republicans really want.
Father, we come as a community that finds itself perplexed on every side, oh Lord.
Somebody said, and I ain't gonna call their name, this is a dying community. Y'all don't look dead to me. Y'all don't look dead to me. I'm just saying.
Cairo, Illinois is dying. The town sits at the junction of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. At one point, it was a booming railroad and port hub, but those industries hardly exist here now. And through decades of racial tension and white flight, the population has plummeted tenfold. Unemployment is double the national rate. 15% of the population lives in the McBride and Elmwood public housing units. And now, the Department of Housing and Urban Development wants to demolish them.
We've examined virtually every option that there is. This, unfortunately, is a dying community. People don't have jobs there. If someone can find a solution that is better than the one that we have, I am all ears.
This is Cairo. This is my home. And I've made a home for my kids. And I don't plan to leave my home for no one. As you can see, I try my best to keep my apartment clean, but so many roaches and dust and dirt, but still I get on my hands and knees, make sure that my apartment is clean for my babies.
Shayla Brooker's family has lived in Cairo for 13 years. And in McBride housing, that means years of bug infestations, shoddy plumbing, lights that often don't work.
We have to wash our dishes in a tub because sometimes our sink downstairs be clogging up and stuff.
For the past year, her kids Latrice, Angelo, and Jaden have had to sleep together in the living room.
This is their room. At the moment, we don't have beds because of the infestation and the bugs.
Shayla works on a factory line and paid her monthly income-based rent until HUD announced its plans for demolition. Many in town blame the former mayor and executive director of housing, James Wilson.
Oh, yeah. Are you Mr. Wilson?
Yes, I am.
My name's Antonia Hilton.
Glad to meet you.
I'm with an HBO crew.
For years, Wilson and friends allegedly mismanaged and misspent public housing tax dollars. It wasn't until 2015 that authorities began investigating, which led to HUD stepping in.
I'm not aware of anything.
Wilson previously denied wrongdoing and declined to comment on the investigation into his actions. But the damage is already done. It'll take $7 million to bring the units back up to code. Also, rebuilding housing isn't what HUD does anymore. Over the years, HUD has lost the federal funds to construct homes for low-income Americans, and Carson hasn't been able to persuade private builders to venture into Cairo.
Thank you for welcoming me to your town.
During a visit to Cairo on August 8th, Carson said, "It seems unfair that the people who are here now have to suffer the consequences of the mistakes that were made by others. But unfortunately, that's the world that we live in. There's a lot of unfairness in our world."
This is what's showing on the front.
What HUD can offer are vouchers that reimburse the cost of moving and Section 8 housing.
We're not in the rebuilding of housing business anymore. Our message has been we have to deal with health and safety. HUD's motto is to provide decent, safe, and sanitary housing. Each day that we don't remove families from what has happened to Elmwood and McBride, we're not holding ourselves accountable to our mission.
So there's no scenario in which everyone who's currently in McBride and Elmwood will just move down the street and stay in buildings right next door.
There's no current scenario. And I think anything outside of being realistic is just false.
1 minute I'm sitting up here going to take my rent to the bank so that I can stay in this apartment. And now you telling us we gotta move? No, that's not right. And that's not fair.
Cairo in crisis. Bring our city back. Let's make it happen.
Here are Shayla's choices. Keep her job and remain in a community she loves, while living in housing even she admits is barely tolerable. Or with HUD's help, apply for a new home, find a new job, and move. But even that requires her to front some of the money. Who do you feel did you wrong? Is it the local people who ran the housing authority? Is it HUD who's telling you now that you've got to move?
Honestly, both. Because if it hadn't been for HUD sending the money down here and the government sending money down here and not coming down here for themselves to see what their money going to, it wouldn't be in this mess.
When she moved here to Cairo, she found like her comfort zone and how she likes the people here. They help each other out and stuff, and having to move is gonna split them up.
So what would be the ideal solution for you?
I would stay in Cairo, but live in like different places, like a house or something like that. But most of the places in Cairo are abandoned.
Do you feel like your family has enough options right now?
Not really, because the options now is either move. There's not really any other options.
You say you don't want to leave, but as far as HUD is concerned, at some point, they're going to come here, and these buildings have to go. People can't stay.
Yeah.
So what's going to happen the day that they come and they're ready to knock them down? Do you know where you'll be? Do you know what you're going to do?
No. No, I don't.
Ooh. Hood. More music.
Sabes que soy el máximo exponente del amor.
Damn sure don't know who that is. It ain't Menudo, goddamn. It ain't goddamn Ricky Ricardo from I Love Lucy. Who is it?
Romeo Santos.
Sounded lovely. I was like, sounded like something you could do, just salsa too, maybe, a slow salsa. That's hard, man. World music.
And I've been trying to move on. Oh yeah, I've tried against the love in you.
Now that shit jam. That's jam. The track had a vibe to it. Her voice was lovely, like very ghostly at times, and I could dig what she was saying. Sounded like she was going through something.
For this life I cannot change.
Definitely Travis Scott. You can tell by the I think it's cool, man. It's trap music, you know what I mean? It's 808s and synths, and it's all about how you freak it. I mean, I think one thing with him, he's kind of mastered, the art of the auto-tune, which is like 80% of music right now. So, if you can do that, plan might come together for you.
I don't care for your paranoid. Us against them fearful kind of walls.
The song made me want to drink a rum punch. Like, has like an island vibe to it. I can't tell you who it is, though.
Jack Johnson.
Oh, dope. That definitely sounded like you was somewhere on the beach with a rum punch. Or the Bob Marley.
That's Vice News Tonight for Tuesday, September 5th.